Hey, cousins, welcome back to another episode of the Sunday Dinner Podcast. I'm joined today by one of my all-time favorite people, my good brother, my business partner, my brother from another mother.
There you go.
Jerry Pena. Welcome to the show, Jerry.
Awesome. It's a pleasure to be here, Robin.
I appreciate you coming.
Episode 8.
Episode 8. We were just like, we moving along.
Moving them up.
We are moving them up.
Yeah.
So, Jerry, I wanted to have you on the show because we've only known each other about 5 years.
Yep.
Like right before the pandemic, we met. Instant, like, energy vibe.
It feels like we're brother and sister, though, forever.
And you always say that, and I love it because one of the reasons why I started this show was because I just feel like a lot of people are disconnected from family. Yeah. And family is a value that I know you and I share. Yeah. You're an amazing son first, a husband, a father, and of course a friend to so many people. And you're just like one of those people who always feel like looks out for me. Mm-hmm. And so I want to kind of talk about a few things today, right? Because Sunday Dinner Podcast is all the things we should be talking about. Okay. Straight, no chaser, with love and compassion.
Yeah. Let's do it.
And so one of the funniest things that I learned when I met you was that actually in Cleveland on the east side, there's a community of Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
So you are Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
Tell us your little story. I know you were born in Chicago, but give it to us as we kind of have this little dialogue about the black and brown, because I want to have a black and brown conversation.
I love that. So thank you for asking that question.
Yes.
I love that question. I think when people think about Latinos, Latinx, Latina folks in Cleveland, we think about the west side.
Yes.
Definitely don't think about the east side.
Right.
Migration, at least the migration of my people, Puerto Rican people, started on the east side. So it started in the central Kinsman area. This was late 40s, early 50s.
No, Jerry.
Yeah. So
that's the same for the people in the Great Migration from the south to the north.
Yeah. So
that's where we started.
So when we started coming over around that time, late 40s, early 50s, it was in that area.
Yes.
My family moved into the East 66 and Superior area in the mid 50s. So they've been there, still there. There's probably like 6, 7 prominent Puerto Rican families. And what I mean prominent is that they've been there for so long.
They've been there, right?
Not prominent with money, right?
Right. Well, they built the community.
They built that community.
Yes.
All the way from, I would say, if we were to draw a map on the east side right now, where Puerto Ricans sort of on the east side where they mainly stay would be from 30th and St. Clair up to 79th.
Yes.
79th across to Superior. And then Superior back down to 55th, 55th to Payne, and then Payne back down to 30th and around.
See, I just don't even know that. So my family kind of 89th and Superior, so a little bit further up, 91st and St. Clair.
Yeah.
But growing up, I didn't even know. I just thought it was a all black neighborhood.
Yeah,
I never knew this history was there.
No, and then I got to give a shout out to my Puerto Ricans in the Broadway community because they've been there also for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But see, a lot of people don't know that because a lot of the Puerto Ricans who live in these areas are Black Puerto Rican. And so you're
going to have to break all this, break it all down.
They blended in really well with the African-American community, but they're Afro-Puerto Rican.
So let's get into it because we are one people.
That's right. Different languages, one people.
Different languages, one people.
Both just dropped us off in different places. That's right.
Right. But give us a little bit of the history of Puerto Rico, because I think when we think about, I'm just going to say Puerto Rican, because we know in the Caribbean, they're just, the boats stopped at different places. So we all have different identities, all different skin tones, different levels of melanin. But when we think about Puerto Ricans, I think Black people identify most closely with Puerto Ricans in this country. Mm-hmm. But tell us just a little bit, as you understand the history of Puerto Rico and it is a territory, all the things that make us understand that we are one people.
Yep. And well, first of all, I want to say Black folks and Puerto Ricans are really close in the Midwest and the East Coast. On the West Coast, Mexicans and Black folks are a lot closer because we never really migrated that way. That's the Spanish folks thing.
Got it. Okay.
Right? So, history of Puerto Rico, what I know, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of people who know way more than me. Puerto Rico, small island in the Caribbean, originally inhabited by Taino Indians, Taino natives. Let me not say Indians, sorry, Taino native folks. And, you know, they were there living happily. It was known as really a religious type island. So a lot of the natives and the Caribs from like Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, and those areas, Panama, used to go to Puerto Rico to like pray. It was it was like a holy land for them. And you know, along came Columbus and other folks from Europe, and sort of invaded those territories and started killing and murdering all the natives off of those lands. And Puerto Rico became this place where it became a melting pot, right? So like when the Europeans came, they also brought slaves from Africa. Puerto Rico was one of the first islands coming in from those voyages. And so the southern part of Puerto Rico is where a lot of the African slaves were left from some of those ships, right? So places like, I'm trying to think, Carolina, places like Loíza Aldea in Puerto Rico.
Loíza, I had an opportunity to go there when I went with you to Puerto Rico a few summers ago.
If you go to Loíza and you are African American, you probably feel right at home because all the people look, you know, and feel just like your culture.
Okay, so your family came from Puerto Rico to Cleveland.
So my family migrated to 3 different places. New York, Chicago, and Cleveland. Yeah.
All right.
So and that was probably the pattern. At least New York and Chicago in the early 50s was probably the pattern of where Puerto Ricans went. Puerto Ricans went. But it was really interesting because the Puerto Ricans that came over first were a little bit more educated, politically minded when they came to New York and Chicago. So those cities were able to build a very vibrant Puerto Rican community. Right. While there's a vibrant Puerto Rican community in Cleveland and Milwaukee and places like that, like smaller Midwestern cities. Most of the folks that came here were from like rural places, farmers, hardworking people. They came to work at steel mills. Lorain, Ohio, at one time had the biggest Puerto Rican population in the country. Per door. They had the biggest Puerto Rican population. And so the mindsets were different, right? Like when I came here from Chicago, I moved there when I was 13. I grew up in a city where, you know, people wanted you to go to college and they wanted you to go into politics or be a lawyer or this and that. In Cleveland, it was like, you're going to work for Ford or you're going to work for Chrysler. It's changing now, right? But sort of the pathway to success was not education.
So before we go further, I want to talk a little bit about this notion of black and brown, because I identify as black, right? Some people say African American, and we can say all the things. I like the term black. But when we say black and brown, like, tell the cousins, like, is that cool to say brown? What should we be saying?
I mean, you know what? I think it's cool to say. It's funny because I've sort of tried to navigate that my whole life. We never said brown growing up.
That's what I'm
like. That was, right? But I do know that every time I filled out an application or I had to fill out a paper, it was only white or black. And so I always tried black because I was like, I'm not white. But the crazy part is, when we think about the demographics in this country, when I was born, they put white on my birth certificate.
Really?
So a lot of Puerto Ricans have white on their birth certificates. So when we think about the numbers and the demographics in this country, they're skewed. Because there's a lot of people that have white. But I mean, look at me, I'm not white. So I'm going to see if I can insert this. I hope I'll be able to insert this into the video. One day we were on screen and we were at a meeting together. And I was like, why do Jerry and I look so much alike? So I took a screenshot and I have it still on my computer somewhere. And I'm like, am I part Taino? Am I part, or, is Jerry, are we from the same? So we really look alike. We have melanin. But then, in every, group of people, the skin, the melanin comes in a variety of shades, right? So, but that's so interesting. And I think about all the time, just like the psychology of living in this country. Black or white, there was no Puerto Rican. The box for you to check. It's just black and white. Still, when the conversation is black and white.
And so instead of brown, what can we say? Because I feel like that was put upon, through politics.
I do, and I also, I'm going to be honest because we're having an honest conversation.
That's right.
I've never seen a black person. And what
This is true.
And what I mean by
This is
that
true.
is, I like the color of your jacket.
This is
I've
true.
never seen a person like to me. It's either dark brown or brown or light brown.
Right.
So I guess that the conversation about black brown, it confuses me a little bit because when I look at the reality of who we are as human beings,
That's
right? I think brown's a beautiful color. Most of us are all brown.
We are brown.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but that's not to change what black folks have been through in this country and how you choose to label yourself.
That's right. That's right. And I think the other thing about it is just lifting us up and not reducing us to, because even in our work, right? And I know I've been guilty of being like, oh, black and brown or BIPOC.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's just because I'm getting older. I don't know. I'm starting to feel like it's a way to lump people together and erase our individual identities and narrative.
That's right.
And so I know the other thing that we struggle with, and I just, we talking.
Yeah, let's do it.
We struggle with, are you Hispanic?
Yeah.
Are you Latinx? Are you Latin A?
Yeah.
Are you Latina, Latino? Because I want us to be better to each other.
Yeah.
Because I think we are very much one family.
Right.
I say it that way. La familia, you always say.
Familia, that's right.
We are la familia. You speak Spanish. I don't. But it's the melanin and it's the shared history of being dropped off in those different ports.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's not enough cohesion. And I want it to be better. So I wanted to talk to you about it because I knew you would tell me the real and we could have the real conversation.
So when I moved here, I was 13, going on 14 years old from Chicago. In Chicago, I grew up calling myself Hispanic.
Hispanic.
The whole community called themselves Hispanic.
Okay.
You know, the Latino, Latina conversation, I learned it in Ohio.
Right.
Right. And it's grown nationally over the years, right? Some people have always identified as Latino, Latina. Some people Hispanic. It depends the region you're from and where you're from.
Yeah.
Right? I want to tie it back to the brown conversation, right? Because I feel like when folks say brown folks or Hispanic folks or Latinx folks or Latin, whatever it is, whatever the new label is after you come to the end there, right? I feel like it puts us all into the same pot. And it's very different, right? Because we come from very different countries, right? So, you know, I wouldn't say I'm the same as, you know, Mexicans or I'm the same as Cubans or Dominicans because we all come from different countries. The politics is different.
Yes.
The way we view the world is different. Culturally, we have some stuff that's the same and the language ties us in, even though there's different words for different things we say in Spanish, right? But I always feel like, and I'm going to tie this into a later conversation because I know you're going to ask me about civic engagement and voting. And right? So like in this country, they've always talked about the sleeping giant, which is when is the Latino community going to wake up and vote in droves, right? The problem is we're not all the same.
That's right.
And so when you approach us to have a conversation, you can't approach us with the same script.
Just script in Spanish.
That's it, right? Just script in Spanish.
Same with black people, right?
Or about the same issues, right?
That's right.
So when I lived in Florida, I had an opportunity to do a lot of civic engagement work in the I-4 corridor, which was like from Orlando up to Tampa.
Okay.
Right. In that I-4 corridor right now, there's probably almost 1 million Puerto Ricans.
Wow.
In that corridor.
Yeah.
Because we're just migrating there like crazy. That's Puerto Rico number 2 now is Florida.
Okay.
Right? But they would send us with a script to talk about immigration or our undocumented brothers and sisters, which I love them.
Right.
But not all my Puerto Rican people understood that conversation.
Right.
Because the other thing is when you're born in Puerto Rico, you're automatically a U.S. citizen.
That's right.
And so this notion of being undocumented and being in this country, a lot of
doesn't apply.
It doesn't apply, right? Even though we're treated when we're here.
That's right.
We're treated the same. There's, me and Jose, that's Mexican, and Carlos, that's Dominican. We're all looked at the same.
Right.
We're very different in regards to culture and just the way we view the world. Yeah.
See, there's so much similarity.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like,
say more.
There's so much similarity with black folks, right? Because you have people now talking about voting, or, President Obama is saying, to Black men, you need to vote. And if you're not voting for, Kamala Harris, then what are you doing? Really?
Yeah.
And it's almost like one band, one sound, everybody rowing in one direction.
Right.
If you're a melanated person in this country with the
right.
shared heritage of oppression and all that comes with that. Yeah. And we're not all the same, because there are a lot of people, our politics is different, our religion is different.
That's right.
We, gone is that time where we came from one place with the exact same cultural makeup.
That's right.
Now we were brought over here, our ancestors were brought over here. And so we created this culture, one that started off, I believe, as a culture of survival, right? So our food, everything from like our food, our religion, the way we, hid things so that we could still celebrate who we were and not be, oppressed. Yeah. But then as the country changed, and I used to have a friend of mine I used to work for, would say at one point before the civil rights movement, it was clear who the enemy was.
And it was easier.
And it was easier to be united. Yeah. Now, does that mean that every single Black person was on board? No, because you had the people who were willing to do the bidding for the other side. Right. But the majority, almost exclusively the majority, understood who the enemy was. And so it was clear. I like to say, and I was guilty of this. I had the house in the burbs with the 2-car garage. I say the 2-car garage house in the suburbs changed all that. Because when you could live wherever, right? So
and
red
we were
line.
told to move, right?
We were
so
told
I remember
to move.
when I was in college, one of my professors was like, get this degree, get a good job, and then
get a good job
up and move to the suburbs.
And move to the suburbs. Right? 2-car garage. So now we think we've made it. And so we are disconnected, because it's almost like this moment where it's like, the system worked for me.
That's right.
The system was never working for you. No. You just kind of were going along, I want to say maybe under the radar of the system, right? Yeah. And so...
And we took advantage of some privileges that were just allowed to.
Just allowed.
They could be taken away, but they were allowed to us.
And that were always going to keep us below that glass ceiling.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
that's real. That's real.
So I understand skin color being similar. And in your case, Spanish, the language being similar. But it's so much diversity within.
It's so diverse, right?
Yeah.
When you go to these countries, or you talk to folks from these different Spanish-speaking countries, it's a different feel, and I love it. I love when I'm in these spaces because I learn from them, right? And it's like, I think it was funny when I was in school. Ever since I was little, it was always like, hey, do you eat tacos every day for dinner? And
oh my gosh. I never had a taco, baby.
That's the funny part. I did once, because I grew up in Chicago, so my family was married. So I had Mexican aunts, Mexican uncles.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like, I grew up eating Puerto Rican and Mexican food.
Got it.
But that's not every Puerto Rican, right?
That's right.
And so like, tacos is not our national dish. No, it's hot food, right? When we hear about spicy food, even in the Caribbean, like Jamaicans love spicy food. Other folks in the Caribbean love spicy food. Puerto Ricans don't eat spicy food.
Okay, y'all got that? Cousins, Puerto Ricans don't necessarily love.
Like, we'll add hot sauce and stuff.
Right.
But we don't.
But we're not doing habanero.
Yes,
right.
Not on purpose.
I think that's so great. And I just love like having this conversation with you, because I know the impact of what the new term, we got to even think about this in our work, the global majority.
That's right.
I've been hearing that so much lately. Yeah. People just say the global majority.
That's right.
But again, are we just turning into a global majority melting pot?
I think that's the way they're trying to organize us to be.
Okay.
Versus the way individually we all think, right? So power-wise, the way we want to build power, I think is that way. Okay. I think Black and brown people should unite and build power, because if we do that, we'll be unstoppable. Okay. Right? The numbers will say that, right? Or tell you that. But in order to do that, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And here's what I mean by that. Even in Puerto Rico, I'm going to talk about Puerto Ricans. I'm talking about other Latin cultures. There's a lot of colorism.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, when I was little, I remember being in a room with my aunts, and, my mom was the only one who had little dark brown boys. And they would say, oh, los negritos de Marisa, the little black boys, Maritza's little black boys, right?
But that wasn't a
It
compliment.
wasn't brown because we don't use that word in Spanish.
And it wasn't a compliment necessarily.
Well, and it could go, and now it's not, but back then it went both ways.
Okay.
So like a term of endearment in Puerto Rico was negrito, negrita.
Okay.
Mira, negrito, come over here. Right? That was a term of endearment. And they would even say that to like white-looking Puerto Ricans.
Okay.
Right? But now it's not, because a lot of us consciously woke up and was like, wait a second here, like, why is like the little black person a term of endearment?
Right.
So anyways, going back to that story, ever since I was young,
Well, black people use that too. We say the N-word too.
Oh, yeah. I guess.
Right? Isn't it the same, right?
Yeah.
We were like, my little... So there's a debate among us, right? Around, like, is it a term of endearment? Or do we still hold on to the trauma that, our ancestors endured being called the little negrita?
Yeah. I never thought about that. But ever since I was little, I developed this consciousness of like who I was and what I looked like, right? And I say all that to say that we have to talk about the differences now in the Puerto Rican culture amongst ourselves and our skin color, right? A lot of folks don't want to talk about it because they bury it as, well, we're all Puerto Rican, we're just all one. That's silly. No, it's not silly, because I can tell you there's a lot of white Puerto Ricans who don't want to go to Luis Aldea in Puerto Rico because a lot of black Puerto Ricans live there.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's the honest conversation that we don't have, right? And so I think we need to have it. I think amongst other issues, right? When we talk about our LGBTQ plus brothers and sisters, we don't have the conversation about queer and gay folks in our community.
Say more. What you mean?
I mean, we don't. We just bury it, right? Or where we come from. Well, here I'll put the whole sort of Latino dysphoria.
Okay.
Sort of, in this conversation. We're very machismo community, whether it's Puerto Rican, Mexican, Cuban, Dominican, you name it. It's the man is in charge type mentality, right? And so having a conversation about a loved one or someone liking a same-sex partner, that's very taboo still. And really? Very taboo. Like that's not the kitchen, that's not the Sunday conversation.
Wow. Right? So when little cousin shows up with his partner, we just don't talk about it. We just act like they're there, but we don't. We're not acknowledging it. We're almost ignoring it.
So case in point, I have a cousin who came out and is loving his new lifestyle. His mom won't even acknowledge.
Wow.
She won't even acknowledge. And he could be there with his partner.
But to her, he's single and not in a relationship. That's a friend.
Oh. That's a little friend, but they won't say that's his partner or life partner or they're in a relationship. No, like that's not happening. And I'm not going to say 100% of us do that, but the majority of Latinx people that I know don't have that conversation. And it's sad. And it's sad because, Robin, I've been like sort of that. I've been that because of the way I am.
Yes.
And the way I embrace people and bring people in, right? My cousins that have come out, I've been that, hey, Jerry, I need to tell you something.
Yes.
Can you break that to the rest of the family?
Wow. You are that cousin. You are the Sunday dinner superstar cousin.
I am that cousin, right? And so I have to have those tough conversations.
Yes.
But we can't ignore it, right? I have one aunt who has 15 grandchildren. Out of those 15, 11 are queer or gay or, lesbian or however they choose to identify.
And she's just like, nope.
No, my older aunt is like, she's okay.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Now,
I got you.
She's the grandma, but like her kids.
Okay.
Yeah. They're the parents of the kids.
Yes, I got it. Yeah. So I love this because at the end of the day, I want our people.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say I don't want to say brown.
No, say brown.
All right. I want our brown cousins.
I'm comfortable with brown.
Okay. I want our brown cousins. So I want our brown cousins to be well and thrive too. Because I feel like we are one people.
One people.
We are. Like, it's a different, and you can't even say it's different because of the way oppression played out.
Yeah.
Enslavement, oppression, racism, discrimination, all the things.
I got a cool story, Robin. So one day, my dad was an umpire, baseball umpire for like 25 years.
Okay.
So we grew up playing baseball. I played Little League, till I was like 17 years old. Because I played a little bit in high school. But when I moved here, I ended up playing for a team that represented Ohio. And we were at a tournament in St. Louis. And my team is there. We're in the hotel lobby. And my team was mixed. It was Black, Puerto Rican, and white. Puerto Rico team gets there. They're from Luis Aldea, right? So when the Black guys on my team sees those players, they're like, "What's up, man? How y'all doing?" All this, right? And they look at me, the team from Puerto Rico, and they're like, "Man, tell them we don't know English. We only know Spanish." And I was like, "Man, they're Puerto Rican. They don't know English."
Right.
Robin, it was the biggest shock to them to see Black folks who didn't know English, only Spanish. But also, it was the craziest universal connection ever. The whole week we were there, they were best friends.
Love it.
They were walking around hugging each other,
laughing
with each other, even though there was a language barrier.
Right.
To at least to the Black guys on our team, they were like, "Yo, this is crazy, and we love it."
We love it.
But we don't teach that in our schools, right? And so, unfortunately, those who grow up here and grow up in these communities that we work in and that we try to help don't see themselves in other people around the world.
Yes, that's the Ubuntu principle, right? It's like, I am because you are.
That's right.
And I think that is a principle that we could probably use to unite us more.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
I love that.
That's right.
I love that story because it doesn't matter. It's our humanity.
No.
It's our humanity. It's me seeing you and recognizing the value of your human life.
Yeah. And it was like pure joy, happiness, Robin. It was so influencing.
I want more of that for us. How do we get more of that? How do we get more Black and brown joy and fellowship? What do we do? What should we do?
So I think there's a couple things we could do. Definitely think we need to have more Sunday dinners together.
Yes.
So maybe that can happen in the future. What does it look like?
Of course.
The Black and brown Sunday dinner.
Yes.
But I also think it starts with young folks, right? And how are we exposing them to so much rich culture that they have around the world?
Yeah.
Around the world, right? Because there's Black folks in France and Paris and only speak French. You know what I mean? And so like, but like you said, we're all one people. We were dropped off in different places. But I think we're at a point now in this world where we're trying to find each other.
Okay.
And I think that's important. Like we need to do more work around helping folks find each other.
Yeah. More work of the diaspora.
That's right.
Yes. We've got to get back to that because I think that's only going to strengthen our fight for liberation. And, the family knows, I say this almost every episode, liberation is the goal. Liberation is the goal.
Yeah.
And my freedom does not require you to sacrifice. We can be free together.
That's right.
Because this oppression thing is old, Jerry. I'm tired.
Yeah. I mean, Robin, I even equate, not to bring up religion, but even within religion, it's like, sometimes it's like, you have to suffer on earth to have peace in heaven. It's like, nah, we can do it here.
We can do it here. And as much as it can be global.
That's right.
Like, we can start local.
That's right.
Right? Like, we've never had Sunday dinner.
Yeah.
We're going to have Sunday dinner.
Let's do it.
We're going to have Sunday dinner.
It's going to be half soul food and half Puerto Rican soul food.
And there we go. What is Puerto Rican soul food? What would you say?
I would say is
it spam?
Roast pork.
Oh, pork. Yeah.
Roast pork, rice and beans.
Yeah. See, and that's a very Southern thing. Yeah. Pork.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time in Mississippi over the last couple of years, like visiting family and stuff like that. Yeah. And man, you think you're gonna go somewhere and get something made with turkey?
Right.
Like, no, it's gonna be pork. It's gonna be pork.
That's right.
And so I
had a conversation with some colleagues yesterday, and they were talking about eating pig ear sandwiches down south.
Oh,
I was like, we eat pig ear all the time.
Oh no. It's certain parts of of pork that I can't even imagine.
I get
right. You know,
that goes back to this notion of we all come from the same place, right? When our ancestors, were sort of dropped off in these places, there was nothing to eat. So they would give them the leftover part of the pigs. That happened in Puerto Rico too.
Yeah.
So that's how we also eat chitlins. We don't call it chitlins.
What do you call it? What is it?
It's called like a cuajito, menudo. It's just tripe, all kind of, We do it like in a stew with white rice, you know what I mean?
Oh.
So, we all eat the same thing. It's just cooked.
Y'all know Puerto Ricans ate chitlins.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't know. But yeah, so even our food, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, I know Sunday dinner, whatever, but the food to me is how we show love. Mm-hmm. It's how we take care of each other. Yeah. And yes, we need to eat our organic, whatever now. We need to make sure we're eating greens and sprouts. And every week we should be eating something else, right? Yeah. But I think there is something about celebrating what our ancestors had to eat.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm glad people usually only eat like chitlins, like maybe at Thanksgiving or Christmas, right? Like we're not eating that every Sunday anymore.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the fact that we still sort of bring that tradition to our plate.
That's right. And I want to say I lied. We have had Sunday dinner before. And I don't know if you remember this. So we had my daughter's 18th birthday
in Puerto Rico. Oh, we did.
I live in Puerto Rico, and it was a Sunday. We had a party for her.
I did not remember that it was a Sunday.
Came.
We did.
And this was the beautiful part. You're talking about like food from the ground, right? So my mother-in-law made a dish called sancocho.
She did.
Right? And Tora was messing around being vegan and vegetarian.
That's right.
But she was willing to try being
That's right.
So she made this dish. It had pork in it, but it was like a stew, like a soup.
Yes.
She got most of the vegetables and all that from the backyard.
I remember that.
And made that, right? And then she made a passion fruit juice.
I remember
and got
that.
the passion fruit straight from the tree.
I remember
right?
that.
And so,
I didn't remember that it was a Sunday. So I stand corrected. We have had Sunday dinner together. Yes.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
That was amazing, right?
Yes.
And we all had a great meal, and we still talk about you and Tora being there with her. She enjoyed it, and like
yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I just love us as a people.
That's
and
right.
I love us as a Black and brown people.
That's right.
And I want us to really lean more on each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you, among all the things I said earlier, are a master community organizer.
Yeah, no,
and I know that
everybody would agree, but I appreciate
it. And I know that like that's just one part of your intellectual capacity. So I don't want to limit you to that.
No.
But you've been on the ground, you've done the work.
Yeah.
Organizing ain't easy.
No, it ain't easy. And I tell you why. I was talking about this the other day. We've broken so much trust in our communities, whether it's Black, brown, poor, white. I've organized in poor white communities. Mm-hmm. We've had organizations come in and offer so much and then take it away, right? Or promise so much and never come through.
Right.
That organizing is really tough because one of the things that you're doing in organizing, the first thing you should be doing is going in there and building trust with that community. Right? And figuring out what are the connection points.
Yeah.
How do you as an organizer connect to that community?
Right.
Sometimes it's in story, right? I tell my story all the time in some of these communities, right? I grew up poor, moved here, ended up homeless, mom on drugs for a bit. Like it was tough, right? But I use those stories to connect in some of the communities that are working because some of those folks face the same trials and tribulations, right? But building trust is really important. And then knowing how to build a narrative of, I always talk about story of self and us, right?
Yeah.
It's a story of us.
Right.
Right? How are we connecting our stories to build a better world together?
Yeah.
I think that's, in organizing, that's tough. And if you can't do that, you can't organize. Or you should.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It takes, and I keep using this word, it takes courage and it takes vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because to say you grew up in a certain condition and to tell other people that, I don't know that people understand that is necessary to build trust, right? So you can, make a lot of promises and just even in the small like community engagement work that I used to do, you would have these organizations, they'd say, oh, we want to do this project, that project in this poor community. Yeah. Well, what I learned very early in my career is you go into the community and you're like, hey, we want, XYZ organization wants to do this. And they're like, oh, that's the 15th organization that's come here.
That's right.
And I remember having that very real moment face to face with some community folks. They gave me a lot of grace because they were like, bless your heart, you just didn't know.
Right.
But at that point, I made a commitment to say, what is the least that this organization should do for you by asking for you? People was like, hey, compensate us for our time.
That's right.
You want to come in here and pick our brains.
That's
Meanwhile,
right.
your consultants are making a lot of money.
A lot of money.
And then you come here and you extract
That's right.
our ideas, our thoughts, what we need.
Right.
So you can go get more money or fill out your application or collect your data and never even have the courtesy to come back and tell us what you learned from what you did.
Robin is so crazy. I remember when I was in Florida and there was this one amazing woman that was, that was part of my organizing team, right? She wasn't being paid. She was a volunteer. Her name was Miss Faith. And I remember Miss Faith would show up to every meeting. She was my board chair when I was executive director of the organization. Like, she just did so much great work. And one day I show up and Miss Faith's lights were off. I went to pick her up in the morning and go to a meeting. Her lights were off, right? And I'm like, that's interesting. Well, maybe she just doesn't turn on her lights in the morning. A couple of days later, I went back, and in the evening, because I had to pick her up for another meeting, her lights were off, right? And so I finally was like, you don't like lights? What's going on, right?
Right.
And it turned out that, her and her husband were just going through tough times and couldn't keep the lights on, right? And so, me as an ED of an organization who's asking this poor lady to come to these meetings all the time,
right,
and share her story,
right,
be a part of this process, right? And she can't keep her lights on. And so me personally, what I did was I was like, here, turn your lights on.
Yes.
Right? And every time I had a chance to help her, I would help her.
Yes.
Right? Eventually, they got back on their feet and they were great. They're great people.
That's amazing.
But all of us, I've had my lights off.
Right.
At times, right? We all go through those tough times. But I say all that to say that we ask so much of our community, but they can barely keep their lights on. And we don't resource them for their time.
We don't.
That's a shame.
It's awful. I'm working on a project with two of my other favorite people, Ebony and Erica Hood from SIAD.
Yeah.
And we came to this point where we're like, okay, we want to bring in some community folks, position them as the experts in this conversation. Yeah. And I was like, what do you all think, like a stipend for, the 4 or 5 hours? I was like, do you think $500 is good?
Yeah.
And they looked at me and they were like, would you do it for $500? And I was like, maybe we should give them $1,000 for the day. And they were like, that's more like it. And so we've got to stand up for our people.
That's right.
Because I know I had a tough time in community doing some work, and it was like, oh, let's give them a $25 Dave's gift card.
Yeah.
And I just used to hate that because I'm like, you think you're going to give some folks some fried chicken?
That's right.
$25 gift card to this very expensive, Dave's, whatever. But groceries are expensive. $25 is not going to do much. Yeah. But you want them to come to 6 meetings and keep telling you what they need in community when you already know because you've already asked 15 times.
That's right.
So it's like that abuse of our own in community.
We just use and abuse folks. And, and we justify it by thinking that what we're working on is going to help them. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's how we justify it. But are we really helping them?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or are we stretching them to a point where, they don't even know who they themselves are, right?
Yes, can't pay electricity. So if you work in community, if you're organizing, if you're working at a nonprofit, advocate, pay your people. Advocate for community people to get financial resources.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And ask yourself, would you take that?
That's right.
To come to these series of meetings? Would you take that amount of money to contribute to these reports and these projects?
And build it into your budget.
And build it into
when you're creating your yearly budget, how much of that is going to be put away for the folks who are showing up every day, like Miss Faith or Miss Brown or Jose, whoever down the street is coming to you.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. Because if we don't do it, and I've been in these spaces, the majority, they're not the majority, but, did you say white folks and people in positions of power?
Yeah.
They're not thinking like that.
That's right.
And usually we're the ones in the positions that are closest to the people.
That's right.
So we've got to be thinking about that.
That's right. And there's also big disparities in the way we pay our folks who are actually doing this work, right?
Yes.
And sometimes we, if you would have asked me 20 years ago, how much do you want to get paid to do this work in community? I would say $10 an hour because I got a big heart and I love my community.
Right.
I still have a big heart and I still love my community, but you're not paying me $10 an hour.
Not $10 an hour.
And so when I started working in these structures, in these spaces, and I seen that white directors were making 150, but they wanted to give me 70. No, because I could just do just as much as that they do. You're going to pay me the same.
That's right.
So young organizers, I always tell them, get that bag.
Get that bag.
Because they're going to give it to a white organizer.
Right.
So get that bag, right?
Yeah.
And then they try to make us feel bad by saying, oh, well, it's not about the money and it's all equal. No. It is when we're dishing out money.
That's right.
You know
it
what I
is
mean?
equal when we're dishing out money. That's right.
When we're dishing out, when
right.
we're talking about money, we have to be equal across the board if we're talking about equity.
And let's be honest about it. I'm here because I can access spaces and places and information
That's right.
that you cannot.
That's right.
So pay me for my value, right?
That's
because my lived experience got me here to be able to get this
When
done.
I first started organizing Robin, quick story, we all went to the organization I work for. They did this like yearly retreat in California. It's like 300 organizers, right? So for a week. So that week they put together a fireside chat with 3 new organizers. I was one of them. It was me and these 2 white guys, right? One of them went to Stanford, one of them went to Harvard. I had just graduated from Baldwin Wallace, right? And so, and I'm not saying Baldwin Wallace is the best school, right?
Go BW.
Go BW, right? But I'm in this space and I'm thinking, man, I'm not smart enough to be in this room with these guys, and so anyways, the conversation started, they started asking questions. But what I started to notice through the conversation was these 2 folks next to me, my colleagues, they turned out to be good organizers, but it was all theory. They were talking about
no
theory.
lived experience and practice.
No lived experience, right? So for me, it was like, wait a second. I lived in these communities.
That's right.
I've worked in these communities.
That's right.
So my mindset started shifting to like, I might not win Harvard or Stanford, but I'll organize the shit out of these guys on the street. Right?
That's right.
And so it really changed my perspective into like, really gaining confidence around. We have to be confident in the work we do because we know our people.
That's that part, Jerry.
And if we don't know our people, we shouldn't be doing the work.
Oh my God.
Yep. So don't do the work if you don't know your people.
I don't know what else we could say.
Yeah.
I don't know what else we could say.
Yeah.
Don't do the work if you don't know our people, because all skin folk ain't kinfolk.
Kinfolk, that's right.
And it's on us to get to know our people.
That's right.
And not be afraid of our people.
That's right.
Because we are really the only ones,
that's it.
A lot of times, that are walking in these rooms that are carrying the water for our people.
That's it.
Liberation is the goal.
That's the goal. And we need to build that bridge.
All right.
Black and brown.
We got to build it. And I know we got to go, and I know you can't, there's limitations.
Yeah.
But tell us why we need to vote coming up.
Yeah. So that's the $1 million question, right? I just think it's important that we really go out and let our voices be heard, right? We always say that every election is the most important election of our life. Robin, I think this is the most important election of our life because we are so divided politically in this country.
Yes.
That, if we vote a certain way, it could determine whichever way we vote is going to determine the next 50 years.
There's going to be an outcome. There's going to be an outcome.
That's going to determine the next 50 years of this country. I believe that, right? And so I feel like, we have these conversations all the time with younger folks. Why should I vote? My vote doesn't matter.
Right.
Yes, it does matter. It does matter because the things that are happening in your community, if we vote and we put people in spaces that can make those changes, we can see those changes happen. But they want us not to care. Yeah. And then they can do whatever they want. So let's just go out and vote.
Go out and vote because our vote matters.
That's right.
All the way at the federal level, the highest office.
That's right.
Down to your precinct committee person. I don't know if you vote for
issues,
those.
Ballot issues.
Ballot issues.
That's right.
We've got to start paying attention. And I know election is coming up. Then there will be more elections next year and the year after. But paying attention to the ballot issues
It's so important.
is right.
Yeah.
So
and educate yourself, right?
yes.
Educate yourself. Issue 1 is a big ballot initiative on the ballot this year. Educate
In
yourself.
Cleveland.
Issue 1.
Okay. What is issue
Yeah.
1? Tell folks.
So issue 1 is around redistricting, right? And so that really matters because the way they draw up the maps could either increase or decrease power in our communities. And so we really have to, make sure that, if they are going to redistrict in the future and remap, that we still, as Black and brown folks, have a say-so.
Yes.
It's around the state.
We got to organize us.
Yeah.
We got to organize us so that we can organize, so that we can make sure our folks are civically engaged.
That's right.
That they're paying attention. It's great to be on TikTok. You know, I'm like everybody else. I look at TikTok too. You can go down a rabbit hole of all these social media platforms. Yeah. But we got to build in time. And I'm big on, in my coaching practice, about telling people about developing practices, right? We've got to develop some type of practice that we can share with people around their civic engagement.
That's right.
Like just knowing the rules of this country and how to live here is so important.
It is important. It is important. And we need younger folks to get in the mix and step up and just hear, let's hear their voices, right?
Let's hear their voices.
Because they're the ones that are changing this country every day we wake up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Jerry, this has been so much fun. Tell me you'll come back.
I will come back.
All right, we'll come back. Maybe season 2 or 3. Yeah. We'll see where the Sunday Dinner Pod goes.
There we go.
But before I leave, on your Puerto Rican Sunday dinner plate, 3 things you must have.
Yeah. Oh. So I'm gonna white rice and beans is just gonna be one because I consider them
together.
Together. White rice and beans, sweet plantains, fried sweet plantains. And then steak and onions.
Steak and onions.
Puerto Rican
Okay.
Steak and onions.
And you said rice and beans, not beans and rice.
Yeah, we say rice and beans.
Rice and beans.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Rice and beans, sweet plantains, and steak and onions.
Steak and onions.
All right, my brother. It's been a pleasure. Can't wait to do this again.
Yes.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Another episode of Sunday Dinner Podcast. Peace. We're out.
Peace.